This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 117 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we're talking about something that I find particularly fun, taking a class when you travel. There's lots of opportunities to learn something new when you travel. And I think, and my guests today agree with me, there's lots of extra benefits from taking a class and learning something far beyond just the new skill you might acquire. So I'll get to that in a second. But first up, I just want to mention briefly that Travel Journal School, to help you write really awesome travel journals that you actually want to read again, is launching again in January. So there's a sign up form at notaballerina.com/journal to get all the info first up. I'm going to be running a 3-week online course for Travel Journal School this coming January 2019. So do come along and find out more about that. And now I want to tell you about when I've taken a class when I travel. Now, I tend to not do it as much as I want to, because often I think because I've got my son with me and I don't always find things that overlap for both of us. But something I want to do more of in the future. When I was in Japan with him earlier this year, I found a really interesting paper making class that I was trying to sign up for, but the timing didn't work out. There's all sorts of interesting things out there if you start looking, and our guests today certainly have some good ideas. But one I did do recently, and I probably mentioned it in episode 111 when I talked about my trip to Thailand recently, was on our final day up in Nan in northern Thailand. We were taken to a place where we were helped or demonstrated how to make flower cone offerings, the kind of offerings you leave at a Buddhist temple. And it involved folding banana leaves, and it was quite tricky. But it was also awesome fun, and I conquered it in the end. And I also got to sit and chat with the lovely woman who was running this course. And for me, that's really the biggest part of it. Is it's a great way to make connections with local people while you're also doing something a bit different and learning about the culture through that. So I think that's an awesome way. Another thing I've often looked at is on Airbnb now, they have a tab for experiences. And these are kind of one-off, 2 or 3 hours usually of some kind of skill. Like it might be, I saw one recently for notebook making somewhere in Japan, or cooking classes, photography trips, all kinds of ways to experience a culture in a slightly, unusual way. And I think that that's a lot of fun. If you're not an Airbnb member, then you can use my code for $55 off the first stay if you're a first-time user at the moment, which is through notaballerina.com/air. And once you're in Airbnb, just look for the experiences tab and you can find all sorts of really interesting things that you can do. Now, my first guest today takes the approach of trying as often as possible to take a class when she travels somewhere. So it's Tiana Templeman, who we haven't had on the podcast yet. I've known Tiana for a few years through blogging, and we reconnected recently in Bangkok at the Australian Society of Travel Writers Convention. And it was really great to chat to her about some of the experiences she's had when she's taken a class while traveling.
Yeah, and that's something that I always do pretty much every or any trip that I do, whether I'm on assignment or whether I'm actually just going on a holiday. I will always try to incorporate some sort of class or learning opportunity or sort of cultural experience whenever I go anywhere. And there's a few reasons for that. I think it's something interesting to do. Sometimes it can be actually a pretty smart practical consideration. So, for example, if you book in for a cooking class, for that, say, $80, you get a chance to meet other travellers. You get to interact with a local. You get to learn about the local destination, because there's sort of no better way, really, I think, to learn about a destination than through food.
Definitely.
You get to actually pick up some new skills. So you get to, you do a cooking class and you learn new skills that you can take home, much better than a tacky T-shirt.
Yes.
And also it actually makes your budget go further because, you've say spent $80 on the tour or the cooking class, but on the other hand, you get lunch or dinner as well, usually as part of that. So
true.
There's a lot of different benefits that you can get from actually doing sort of some classes or learning when you're traveling, I think. And that even applies to Australia as well.
Have you done some kind of classes in Australia?
Yeah, I have. I've done up in the Northern Territory. I did an absolutely fantastic Indigenous art class out at Nitmiluk Gorge. Yep. So some local ladies actually sat down with me and taught me how to paint in the local style, which was fantastic.
Cool.
And recently I did a cooking class up at Noosa, and that actually talked about regional produce and the evolution of, the food culture there, and also Australian produce in general, organic farming. But the thing I loved best about it was the food was really amazing.
Double bonus. That's awesome. I honestly have never really looked into that in Australia. I do sometimes when I'm traveling overseas, because I agree. For me, the best part is getting to meet a local and having that chance to interact. And it's kind of like a relaxed way to interact with a local, because you kind of slowly get to know them while you're doing something else, like often a hands-on kind of thing. And it sort of just is a really easy way to kind of make small talk and get to know them better.
That's right. And it sort of, I guess, opens the door to those sorts of conversations, because if you're a person on a tour, and to use a food tour, for example, so I went to Bangkok earlier this year for the Australian Society of Travel Writers Conference, and just when I did a food walking tour there before the conference actually started, and it wasn't just being able to talk to the guide, but even having that guide facilitate conversation with some of the stall holders. So if I had a question that I wanted to ask, or I was interested in something, because I didn't speak Thai, I wouldn't have been able to ask, but she was able to interpret. And then sometimes it was just sort of a bit more of a general conversation as well. It wasn't just about what they were cooking or what they were selling. And you don't get to do that if you're not actually doing a formal class or a formal tour.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. Having a translator handy in that kind of situation is a bonus of being on those kind of situations. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking of one I did in Japan where, it's kind of a very traditional Japanese thing to make sushi, but, more than half of it was just chatting with the chef and finding out about his normal everyday life and the baseball team that he loved and all of those kind of little things that, because you're there for an extended time and you can just have those relaxed moments, it's easier. It's harder than, you can't kind of go up to someone in the street and have that conversation.
That's true, and I think it's interesting that you say that you did a tour in Japan, because the tour that I did when I was in Japan was a tea ceremony, and it sort of, initially spoke about the culture of tea in Japan and what it actually meant, that it wasn't just a drink. And then it was sort of talking about tea appreciation and actually participating in a proper tea ceremony and being instructed on how to do that properly. But the thing I really loved about that was, if you're going to a destination, say like Japan, where culturally it's very different, sometimes I think as a traveller, or maybe it's just me, it can be hard to kind of connect with the culture because it's just so different to what you're used to. But after doing that tea ceremony, I just felt so much more relaxed there, because I felt I had a deeper understanding of the culture in general. It wasn't just about tea. I learned so much during that sort of 90-minute tea ceremony class that when I went out again and started travelling around in Japan, I felt so much more comfortable and so much more knowledgeable, and I guess a bit more secure, knowing that I wasn't going to make, too many terrible mistakes, because I picked up quite a few tips during that class.
Tiana's had all sorts of interesting experiences learning something when she travels, and I'm going to take a leaf out of her book and try and do it even more, because it results in so much fun and learning about all sorts of aspects, not just the skill. Now, my next guest today is Cheri Shanti, who has been on the podcast before chatting about Cuba and is back again because she first went to Cuba to take a very, very special class, and I found her story particularly intriguing.
when I first went to Cuba back in 2010, the first time, the reason I went was specifically to study some of the music and the religion of Santeria. I've been a drummer for most of my life, so it was obviously kind of a natural thing that I follow that path. And I got the opportunity or I created the opportunity, I guess, to go there and study with a master drummer in a little village, a little fishing village called Cohimar. Lovely little place close to Havana where I stayed for the first time. And every day I would meet with my drum teacher and we would play in this kind of like very interesting backyard of another friend of mine that I met there that was filled with animals and pigs and chickens and all kinds of stuff. And we would just sit there and drum for hours and hours and hours. Wow. It was really awesome. And then when I was in Trinidad, I also do drum and dance classes there. I have now I have a whole community of amazing drummers and dancers that I'm working with and have available for other people to work with as well. But it's beautiful to study in another country, another culture, because their whole way of teaching is so different. And the way that they relate to expressing themselves. So as a drummer and a percussionist, particularly, since that's a lot of what I've studied in other countries, is their relationship to the rhythm is very different. And it's very non-cerebral. And what I mean by that is in the sort of Western mentality, United States, Europe, when drummers teach, they teach with numbers very often, not 100% of the time, but everything is rationalized with numbers. So the counts, for example, if it was a beat and it's like boom, chicka, chicka, boom, chicka, they might be counting it out one and a one. They'll do it sort of with numbers. Uh-huh. Whereas in other countries and other cultures, they don't even really have a reference point to that because the information is passed down orally, generation to generation. So they never learned it with numbers. And if you try to ask them, and of course, this isn't 100% across the board. If you're studying in Havana with someone who's trained in the music academy or the music university, of course, that's a different thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about more the roots kind of traditional lineages. Right. They don't have a reference point to that. So if you ask them where the one is, they kind of look at you funny. Like one is where rhythm starts for the non-musicians out there. They don't really have a reference point and they just kind of look at you with this blank look. Well, the rhythm goes like this. So that's always a really fun thing when I'm studying rhythms in other countries, is just to see how they relate to the language of music, really. So it's really kind of a fun thing. If you're a musician, I definitely recommend studying music in other countries because you just learn the language of the music rather than the numbers and the cerebral aspects of it. It's very integral. They grew up with this music. This music is, in their DNA from generations, and they don't need to rationalize it and figure it all out. They just know what it sounds like and they know what it feels like in their body. So they're able to convey it in a much more organic way. And I say non-cerebral because you're not looking at sort of the numbers on the page and how the lines work and the music staff and all that. You're just feeling the music. And the same thing when they teach dance. It's very, you just feel it. You have to feel music, not understand the music rationally or cerebrally. So that's a really fun thing in Cuba.
It sounds like such a special experience, and I'd encourage all of you who already have some kind of skill, for example, an artistic skill or a musical skill, to seek out chances abroad when you travel to develop that, because not only will you, perhaps add to your skills, but like Cheri explained, the way you can learn so much about a culture or learn your existing skill differently because of cultural differences, just sounds really fascinating to me. So my final guest today is Eva Westerling, and she chats about a time when she was in Jordan and found a particularly interesting class to do. Now it's a cooking class, cooking classes are kind of becoming common these days, but this one certainly sounds like a cooking class with a difference. And I really, really love the way Eva really enjoyed this experience.
I spent 3 weeks in Jordan in November, and I've done a lot of research before. I bought a guidebook that I had sort of read almost all the way through. And also, I Googled for a lot of travel blogs to see, what kind of out of the box things to do there are. And I found a website of a place called Beit City, which means my grandma's house. It's in Amman, in the capital of Jordan, and it's actually like a cooking school type place where 3 sisters inherited the house of their grandma when she died, and they wanted to preserve the really, really beautiful house in a sustainable way, and also kind of do a community project out of it. So now you can take cooking classes where a woman from the neighborhood, who usually don't work, I guess, cook with the tourists, or I guess they also offer it for locals. And one of the 3 daughters or granddaughters sort of facilitates the whole event. So they translate and they explain a bit here and there, and they also take photos, which I loved because I had my hands dirty the whole time. So they did this with my camera and with my phone in between. So that was really nice.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah, and the house is so beautiful. The grandma decorated everything herself. So she embroidered the furniture, and there's family photos everywhere, and it's such a nice place. And well, when I first contacted them, they said it would cost me, like, if it was just me, it would cost 120 euros. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to spend that on food. I have to cook for myself.
No, true.
And then 3 days later, they sent me another email and they said, oh, now we have 2 more people signed up for the same date. So now it would only be around 50. And I was like, okay, that's fair enough. So I said, I'll come. And then in the end, it ended up being even cheaper. I think I spent 40 euros because there were 2 more people joining, and it just gets a bit cheaper then.
Oh, lovely.
So it was 5 of us cooking a 4-course dinner with and also baked some bread and everything from scratch. So that was really, really cool. We roasted aubergines on the fire. Basically, we just put them on the gas cooker, and then we had to peel them and mash them and mix them together with tahine, the sesame cream, and lemon juice, and that makes what's called mutabal. So that was sort of the starter type food with the bread, and we made a salad, and then we cooked something that was really interesting. They call it an upside down dish, where you put some sacrifice tomatoes on the bottom of a pot, and then other vegetables, and then chicken that has been prepared and sort of cooked a little bit before, so it wouldn't take forever. And then you fill it up with rice and broth and put it in the oven. And then when it's ready to be eaten, you sort of upside down it on a plate. And it just looks so beautiful with those like roasted tomatoes, basically.
Yes, that sounds gorgeous.
And it was so yummy. And then for dessert, we had like a cake type thing, like a dry, spongy cake with coconut and some sugar syrup. I mean, they were nice. They didn't put the normal amount of sugar syrup on it because I think we couldn't have that. But it was just a fantastic evening.
Well, that sounds really special.
It was, definitely.
I love those kind of situations, and you get to chat to some of the locals as well.
Yeah, exactly. The local lady that did the cooking with us, her English was very, very limited, and none of us spoke Arabic. So we had to have things translated back and forth, but it was really fun, and the other people were great. I mean, they were also from all our different places and so well traveled. And then so we sat down for dinner with really cool stories to share and eat this really yummy food. And I think it was probably one of my 3 favorite things I've done in Jordan, next to visiting Petra and Wadi. So
oh, wonderful. It sounds like a really lovely way to experience something a little bit different What a cool experience. And she touched on something that we hadn't mentioned so far about getting to know other travellers as well. And I can just imagine that mealtime after spending such an interesting time together, learning how to cook the local dishes and learning about the local culture, and then to sit around and share travel tales of your own from far-flung corners of the globe. That is definitely my idea of a wonderful, wonderful evening. So thanks for describing that, Eva. So that's all I have for you today. So thank you very much for listening to episode 117. Because it's episode 117, that means you can find the show notes at notaballerina.com/117. All the show notes, as usual, contain links to my guests and their sites and anything else that we've talked about, basically. So to summarise, first of all, a link to the Airbnb sign up if you need at notaballerina.com/air. AIR, and I'll leave a link in the show notes to where you can search for the experiences on Airbnb in particular. They normally come up the top, but sometimes you might want to link through. And also don't forget to head over to sign up for Travel Journal School information if you want to. That's at notaballerina.com/journal. That will just put you on the list so that I can send you an email when it's all launched and you can see if it's something that's for you, or maybe a Christmas gift for someone that you know who loves traveling and maybe likes to keep a travel diary too. So on to my guests, and first of all, I welcome for the first time Tiana, and Tiana's website has just been renamed and it's called The Travel Temple because she is Tiana Templeman. I think this is a very clever name. You can find it at tianatempleman.com. I then chatted with Cheri of The Breath of Cuba, and you can find her at thebreathofcuba.com. She has an awesome book as well. And finally, I chatted with Eva, and her blog is Not Scared of the Jet Lag, and you can find her at notscaredofthejetlag.com. I'm very excited to hear from Eva soon. She is out wandering in the desert in Morocco with other previous Thoughtful Travel podcast guest, Anna. And they were introduced through the podcast. So I'm really hoping they're enjoying each other's company. I'm also going to leave in a link in the show notes to the Grandma's House place that Eva mentioned in Amman in Jordan, Beit City, where you can sign up to have a cooking class there. I'll leave a link in the show notes because the spelling is probably not what you expect. But in case you're not looking at the show notes, BeitSitti.com. I had a look. Looks amazing. I've long wanted to get to Jordan, and one day when I do, I'm going to look up Beit City for sure. Do come along and join us to chat all things thoughtful travel in our Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group. You can find it just by going to Facebook and searching for Thoughtful Travellers and requesting to join the group there. And I will let you in, of course. We have 330 odd lovely members in there now, chatting away about all sorts of wonderful travel topics. Also, you can tweet me at Amanda Kendall and use the hashtag ThoughtfulTravelPod. Show notes, just to reiterate, are at notaballerina.com/117. Thank you very, very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.